My guest is the Senate Republican leader, Bob Huff, who is joining us to talk a bit about transportation issues and a piece of legislation that he has authored. Senator Huff, thanks so much for being with us on the program.
Great to be with you.
Let's talk transportation. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, the state has a propensity to divert funds from one source to pay for something that's a higher priority. And what's happened in the last 10, 15 years, we've diverted a lot of money from transportation. So this stems the latest diversion of that. Just in the last 5 years, we've diverted $5 billion that could be going to fix our roads. So trying to stop that hemorrhaging and make sure transportation dollars go to transportation projects.
So officially, what would the legislation say? You can't all money earmarked in transportation or coming in stays for it, or how would you go about doing this?
Yeah, we actually passed two propositions. One was after Gray Davis started diverting funds, and so we thought we nailed the door shut then. And then again later on, as things started to turn down, the voters went back with a different proposition and nailed it shut again. What they started doing then was taking some of the truck weight fees, because it wasn't specifically prohibited, and using that to retire general obligation debt. So this would stop that. You can't use it for anything other than transportation.
I hear about transportation dollars being diverted. I also hear other people who throw their arms up in the air and say, as we get more electric vehicles, dollars aren't coming in for the weight of those vehicles on the road, so something has to be done there. In a big picture problem-solving way, this diversion of funds will help, but will it ultimately solve the problem?
Well, it doesn't solve the problem, but it's a first start. The governor talked in January about how we needed to fix the infrastructure, and he didn't say how. He just set up the discussion point. So the speaker came up with a plan that would basically create a car tax every year of $52 or so. Though she hasn't introduced language yet. She talked about ideas, but she would raise a couple $1 billion and only put $1 billion of it back into transportation. And then Senator Jim Bell's also, have a multiple tax increase measure. So it's starting to draw some scrutiny. Where mine differs from theirs is it just says, let's start by taking the money we currently are paying in road fees or taxes for fuel taxes and make sure that goes to transportation, and make sure we lock that up in the future. So any of these other competing plans that come out, we know for certain as taxpayers it's actually going to go into our roads and bridges and potholes.
All right. Now, again, what the others may be doing is, again, you say some of the money has been diverted away that's coming in for that. Then they would go and propose raising more taxes and only putting a portion toward that and shifting some more of it away to something else. Is that how it works up there?
Well, yes, obviously it is. But, the thing is, if I went and looked at your checkbook, I would find out what your priorities are with how you write checks. And the state budget is no different. So the Democrat-controlled legislature has different priorities in transportation. They always talk transportation, but even when they raise new revenues to fix it, they're going to divert some elsewhere because they have other needs that aren't quite as understood by the average driver that's spending over $800 a year just on increased car maintenance, tire wear, and fuel consumption because our roads are in such disrepair.
What are some of the areas that are competing for it but maybe aren't as sexy to sell, that need dollars, and then so you have these transportation things, not yours, but others, that want to take the money that is really supposed to be for transportation? What are some of the other issues?
Well, so just before we even knew we had a windfall of money coming in this year, and by the way, we do, it's looking like now between what was expected in January to what's expected now, we have a $15 billion unexpected surplus just in the last 5 months. So just stepping that aside, before we knew that, the Democrats had already had a $900 million increase for increased pension contributions, salary benefits for state employees, another $1.4 billion for health and human service programs, and another $165 million increased correction spending. So these just they propose money for this and they say, we don't have money for transportation.
Wow. And what about, you mentioned this $15 billion surplus, talk of the governor trying to renew the proposition that raised taxes on Californians. It's going to be pretty hard to sell, isn't it, if we have these kind of surpluses going on?
It'll be a tough sell. And to be fair, I don't know if the governor's behind that. He did say in January in his State of the State and introducing the budget, he called them temporary again. Temporary is a very relative term up here in Sacramento, but he does keep saying temporary. Democrat leaders, though, are talking about extending it. Certainly the public employee unions that benefit from that extra largesse are talking about extending it. But it's absolutely going to be a tough sell when our economy is recovering as we knew it would, and they have this just horrific amounts of money piling in they hardly know what to do with.
Well, what about that, the economy recovering? There are many groups out there that say the onerous hand of the state on them and the regulations and the unfair legal environment are killing business, and then you hear that this money's coming in and that the things are recovering. Is it despite all that? What's going on?
It's despite all that, and it's very unequal. So we have, California is blessed with high tech, right, and biotechnology and venture capital. And so that fosters a very robust economic model that's really not steady. It's boom and bust. But Silicon Valley is doing very well. And yet you get the eastern parts of the state, the inland areas that are still recovering from the housing boom. The housing is upside down still, and it's definitely an emerging two Californias of the very wealthy and those that are doing well in the burgeoning part, and then the traditional industries that have supported California that are in decline because we've changed the way we do business and we basically price them out of being competitive.
Senate Republican leader Bob Huff is with us. He is talking about efforts to keep the money that is raised for transportation in transportation. Apparently, to the tune of a lot of money is pulled out of that, and this has been a standard operating practice up there. How come more people don't think that it's an obvious solution what you've got here? I guess because they have vested interest in keeping the money elsewhere.
Well, the legislators have their other ideas of where they want to spend money, and the average person does want it to go to transportation. And again, that's why the voters have supported Prop 22 and Props 42 previously, thinking that they were nailing the door shut on this bleeding of transportation dollars to other priorities. But there is an immense creativity that happens up here under the dome, and the legislators and staff just come up with ways that if it's not specifically nailed down, then the money's going to go elsewhere. And so that's what this constitutional amendment would do, we believe, is get the final nail on that door so they can't open it up and divert those funds anymore.
How does the process work? Walk us through the technicality that allows them to actually shift it when we thought it was nailed down to keep it there. What do they do?
Well, what they did this time, because we talked about taxes, transportation taxes, fuel taxes going, that I believe that's what the last proposition was, but we didn't specifically say truck weight fees. Now, you see these big trucks out here, and, they're 80,000 pounds rolling down the highway, and they do create a lot of wear and tear on the roads. So we require them to pay truck weight fees so that we can help repair any damage that they do, because commerce is good for our, economy and all that. Well, the legislature, because it wasn't specifically nailed down, they took $1 billion a year of those truck weight fees that were being collected, and they started using that to retire debt from the general fund. So that's how they did it. It was very clever. And the debt they were retiring was transportation debt, but it's the only general fund bonds that the state has that are using specific transportation fees or any other specific fee to pay it off. The rest are all funded out of the general fund. So it was a little sleight of hand, and it's diverted $5 billion since they started doing that.
And they would say, as you just mentioned, technically it is retiring transportation debt, therefore it is transportation, therefore we haven't done anything wrong. And maybe technically they haven't, but that wasn't the intent.
Well, again, we've had transportation bonds for water. We've had transportation bonds for housing. We've had a lot of, not transportation bonds, but bonds. We've had a lot of different bonds. All of them have used, and it was expected that they would be using the general fund revenues to pay for that when those bonds are passed. This is the only one where they found a different creative way to start spending that money.
You mentioned the surplus that's coming in. Even with the surplus, if you figure in the unfunded mandates for the union members and their retirements, are things still that rosy?
Well, what's really going to happen this year is we did create a rainy day fund last year. The voters approved that overwhelmingly, and along with the way Prop 98 works for education funding. So education and the rainy day fund will be taking a significant amount of that new money, as they should. But with $15 billion, there's more than enough money to take care of the transportation issue that they're diverting right now and get back to funding the debt the way that it should be funded.
Why is it that our highways still are so chocked with holes, and you mentioned the cost we all pay to repair our vehicles? How do we let that be the case? How does the legislature meet and allow that to happen?
Well, it's real simple. They have higher priorities than transportation. When we have budget hearings, and every item in the budget has a constituency, you have all these special interest groups that come up here and make their case about why they need to have more funding. And by the time you get these emotionally, and there's a lot of great stories told. There's a lot of great need within the state. But by the time you end up funding all of those things, which tend to be the legislature's highest priority, there's not enough funding left for transportation. That's why it makes sense that at least the money we are paying the transportation ought to be going to real transportation projects.
Do we need to put together a group of citizens to come up and lobby you who've had to pay for new tires and repair their shocks because of this and create stories? Would that help?
It would help when we bring this bill up, yeah. We got to get 2/3 vote from the legislature to get this on the ballot. It doesn't need, constitutional amendments don't need the governor to weigh in, the people weigh in, but you have to get 2/3 through both houses to get this done. And, just writing letters, making phone calls to the legislators, coming up here, making the case about, out in my neck of the woods in my district, the 5760 freeway interchange has been you hear that on the radio every morning. It's backed up because it's the most dysfunctional intersection, one of the most dysfunctional in the nation. And when it comes to trucks, it's the most congested for goods movement.
So all these things need, I guess, people have to compete to get their dollars to keep their dollars. In other words, all those cars and trucks on the highway, there's really not a good voice for them up there.
There is not a good voice for them. It's not as effective, certainly, as many of the other competing demands for the legislature to fund. And when you get down to it, people will eventually pay more. Each L.A. County, San Diego County, Orange County, San Bernardino County, many of the counties are what we call self-help counties. They will tax themselves, actually, to help their infrastructure. As we've done in L.A. County, we'll have another one we're facing again. But people, if they know it's going to go to transportation projects, it's spelled out specifically, they will pay to get that done. The legislature knows that. So they figure these potholes and streets and roads and freeways and bridges are all going to take care of themselves. They can fund other priorities, and the counties will take care of it. And that's just a backward way of looking at things. We're already paying this money in transportation fees, in this case, weight fees. We should be keeping that into fixing the roads as it was intended.
Senate Republican Leader Bob Huff, thank you so much for getting us an update on that. Amazing to see how you have to fight for every dollar. And there needs to really be a California Association of Road Users or something. And we need to go up there and have our day on the Capitol.
You can be our spokesperson.
There you go. Take care.
All right. Could be